One of the great myths out there is that natural medicines aren't scientific. The truth of the matter is, for most common health conditions, we can build a stronger scientific case on the use of diet, lifestyle modification, attitude adjustment, and the proper use of dietary supplements than we can for many of the drugs that are in vogue. I'm going to give you an overview on what is inflammation. We'll talk about what is silent inflammation. Then we'll look at some strategies to reduce that silent inflammation. This chronic silent inflammation is a center feature in virtually every chronic degenerative disease. This includes Alzheimer's disease, cancer, heart disease, as well as arthritis, intestinal inflammation, and a long list of other health conditions. I like this end part because I get a chance to get up on my soapbox and really share with you some of the things that I've learned that can really help people live not only a healthier life, but a happier life and create more value in their life and the lives that they touch.
On behalf of Nature's Pantry and Natural Factors, I want to welcome you to tonight's lecture with our good friend, Dr. Michael Murray, Inflammation, the Silent Killer. A couple weeks ago, we were privileged enough to be invited to a Natural Factors dinner at Natural Products Expo West, a trade show for the products industry. And there we were able to hear the vision of Natural Factors. And you're able to get to know some of these people more on a one-on-one intimate basis. And I was very touched by Dr. Murray. His love for not just the industry, but for the people and how he wants to help you get better. That's what drives him. And Dr. Murray, I want to thank you for what you said at that dinner. It was inspiring, and it's great to hear that you care.
Thank you.
In our industry, you're starting to see more and more corporations, but when you get the personal touch like Dr. Murray, it is a blessing. Thank you, Dr. Murray.
My pleasure.
Dr. Murray is one of the world's leading authorities on natural medicine. He has published over 30 books featuring natural approaches to health. His research into health benefits of proper nutrition is a foundation for a best-selling line of dietary supplements, Natural Factors, where he is the Director of Product Development. He is a graduate, former faculty member, and serves on the Board of Regents of Bastyr University in Seattle, Washington. His newest book is the Encyclopedia for Natural Medicine. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Michael Murray.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
You bet. Well, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here once again. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience. Well, tonight's topic is inflammation, the silent killer. And I'm going to give you an overview of inflammation, and we'll talk about dietary strategies and supplement strategies to deal with this condition. Before we get into that, I just want to give you a little bit more of my background. I'm a naturopathic physician, a doctor of natural medicine. I'm a graduate, and I've served on the faculty and board of trustees of Bastyr University in Seattle. As I was going through my education process, it occurred to me that if natural medicine is based upon truth, that it should be able to stand up to scientific investigations. One of the great myths out there is that natural medicines aren't scientific. The truth of the matter is, for most common health conditions, we can build a stronger scientific case on the use of diet, lifestyle modification, attitude adjustment, and the proper use of dietary supplements than we can for many of the drugs that are in vogue. Over the last 30 years, I've written over 30 books, and these books are based on over 60,000 scientific articles that I've pulled from the medical literature. So I know firsthand what the scientific evidence states as it relates to these natural products. And I can assure you that Again, for most common health conditions, you should be looking to nature first and not to the drugs. As Bob mentioned, my latest book is an updated version of the Encyclopedia of Natural Medicine. This is a 1,200-page reference book that tells you what you can do to address over 100 different common health conditions. I have a whole chapter on silent inflammation, so I'm just going to give you kind of a crystallized view of that chapter tonight. We will have plenty of opportunity for questions and answers. And as Bob said, if you have additional questions, I'll be here tomorrow from 10 to 12. So I'm going to give you an overview on what is inflammation. We'll talk about what is silent inflammation. Then we'll look at some strategies to reduce that silent inflammation. If you fall down and scrape your knee, you have obvious inflammation. Obvious inflammation is characterized by redness, heat, swelling, pain, and dysfunction. Pretty obvious if you sprain your ankle or bruise your elbow, you have inflammation. But there's another type of inflammation that's not so obvious, and we refer to it as silent inflammation. This is a underlying factor in many different health conditions, and it's characterized by an interaction between our antioxidant system, which I'll talk about briefly, as well as our vascular lining and the production of various inflammatory compounds. This chronic silent inflammation is a center feature in virtually every chronic degenerative disease. This includes Alzheimer's disease, cancer, heart disease, as well as arthritis, intestinal inflammation, and a long list of other health conditions. How do we know if someone has silent inflammation? Well, there are some blood tests that can be done. How many people have heard of the C-reactive protein? This is a marker that tells us how much inflammation is going on in your body. And this marker is a very good indicator of your risk for having a heart attack or stroke. There's also fibrinogen, which is another marker for a heart attack. This slide, what it's telling us is that a high C-reactive protein is a stronger predictor of having a heart attack than a high cholesterol level. About 50% of people that die of a heart attack have normal to low cholesterol levels. So cholesterol, the only reason we make such a big deal about it is because the drug companies want you to be taking their drugs to lower cholesterol. Heart disease is much more complex than that. And what's more important than your cholesterol level is the amount of inflammation that you have going on in your body as measured by the C-reactive protein. So what this slide is showing us, if we have a low C-reactive protein and a high LDL cholesterol, we have a lower risk of having a heart attack compared to a high C-reactive protein and a low LDL cholesterol. So a high CRP is more of a predictor of having a heart attack than a high level of LDL cholesterol. One of the key determinants of the level of C-reactive protein is our degree of insulin resistance. Now, I've talked about this in some of the other lectures. Insulin resistance is a very common condition in North America. When you're overweight, particularly if your waist is larger than your hips, you're likely insulin resistant. If you have type 2 diabetes, you're clearly insulin resistant. When we start gaining weight around our abdomen, collectively these fat cells start acting like a tumor. And what does a tumor want to do? It wants to grow. So these fat cells grow by secreting compounds that block the action of insulin. Insulin is a hormone that is supposed to bind to receptors on our cells to open up channels that allows glucose and other nutrients to enter that cell. So when we develop insulin resistance, we really set the stage for gaining more weight and eventually getting type 2 diabetes. Well, this insulin resistance is a centerpiece for developing heart disease and developing Alzheimer's disease, developing cancer, because it leads to significant inflammation. One of the things that happens with this insulin resistance is that it leads to your blood getting a bit too thick. And we measure blood thickness by looking at a substance called fibrinogen. This is a clotting factor, and it promotes heart disease, and it promotes the formation of these clots. So we don't want that. So this is another marker that you should have done when you go in for your yearly physical: C-reactive protein and fibrinogen. Fibrinogen levels carry with it high risk for having a heart attack. People who exercise regularly, eat vegetarian diets, and consume a little bit of alcohol have lower levels. Natural products to reduce fibrinogen include enzymes, particularly an enzyme from soy called nattokinase, niacin, garlic, ginger, as well as other proteolytic enzymes. A lot of the negative effects of insulin resistance are due to the effects it has on our endothelial cells. Now, our endothelial cells are the cells that line our blood vessels. Now, if I stretched out all my endothelial cells flat, they would take up the space of about a football field. So this is a tremendous surface area in our body. And this is the area that's coming in contact with our blood. So with what we have circulating in our blood is coming in contact with the lining of the blood vessels. And these cells that line the blood vessels are very important in regulating inflammation. Some of the factors that cause damage to those cells lead to severe inflammation. So what are some of the things that can damage those endothelial cells? Well, we're going to look at those. We can also look at things that protect those endothelial cells, and they will reduce inflammation. So what are some things that we want to do to improve the function of these endothelial cells? Remember, these cells are very important in mediating inflammation. Well, diet, exercise, and proper supplementation. We want to enjoy these phytochemicals. What are phytochemicals? Well, these are compounds in our foods, plant foods, that protect our cells from being damaged. Some very good foods for protecting these endothelial cells are very healthful, like chocolate. Chocolate's very good. Green tea, red wine, richly colored fruits and vegetables in general are very helpful for those endothelial cells. The type of oils that we consume in the diet are also very important. Omega-3 fatty acids and monounsaturated fats that we get from olive oil and nuts and seeds. I want to talk about some superfoods to reduce inflammation. We have to start with diet to reduce inflammation. So these are examples of some superfoods, and I'll briefly describe a few of them. Everyone knows about blueberries, right? Of all these foods up here, and I asked this question I think last year, so some of you may know the answer. Which one is regarded as having the highest level of antioxidants? Antioxidants are food compounds that protect against damage. How many people think it's broccoli? How many people think it's blueberries? How many people think it's tomatoes? How many people think it might be these small red kidney beans? It's these small red kidney beans. Okay, according to the United States Department of Agriculture, the food that has the highest antioxidant capacity of these foods shown are these small red kidney beans. So beans can be a good source of these beneficial compounds as well. So all of these foods on that slide, the beans, low gluten, whole grains, flavonoid-rich berries, citrus fruits, cruciferous vegetables, high carotene vegetables, salmon, lycopene sources like tomato, soy, nuts and seeds, green leafy vegetables, herbs and spices. These are anti-inflammatory foods, and this is where our diet should really be focused. You want to avoid foods that have the wrong type of fats. Particularly harmful are the animal fats. Arachidonic acid is an animal fat found in meat and dairy, and it's associated with producing more inflammation in our body. These sorts of foods are not good for fighting inflammation. These are very inflammatory foods. I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know none of you eat any of these foods. But you really have to avoid fried foods and foods that are high in that arachidonic acid. And these foods really are robbing us of our health. I mentioned earlier this role of insulin resistance, and it's an epidemic. And again, what happens is we start gaining weight around the abdomen. This central obesity leads to alterations in a number of compounds that produce insulin resistance and promote inflammation. And so we have this big positive feedback cycle really steamrolling and snowballing until we develop type 2 diabetes. These are some of the hormonal factors that are secreted by fat cells. Collectively, our fat cells now are thought of as being a component of our hormonal system. And what's going on when we start gaining that weight is that we see severe alterations in various hormones. And the bottom line is that these hormones block the action of insulin and promote inflammation. So we really, if we're talking about reducing inflammation, reducing silent inflammation, we have to look at improving the action of insulin. When you go in and you have a blood test for C-reactive protein and it's elevated, they've shown without question the biggest contributor to elevations in C-reactive protein is insulin resistance. They've also shown that diet can be very effective in lowering that inflammation. So we're going to talk about some dietary strategies, but before we get to that, I want to talk about a way to improve your insulin action through supplementation. Now, if you've come to my lectures before, I've mentioned the importance of PGX. What PGX is, it's a dietary supplement. It's available in capsules, it's available in granules, and it's the most important natural product in North America today. If you're overweight, if you have type 2 diabetes, if you have an elevation in C-reactive protein, you need to be very familiar with PGX. What it is, it's a super fiber. It's the first of what I think will be many super fibers. We take 3 natural fibers and we put them in this large chamber and mix it with water and agitate it under the right pressure and temperature to form a new molecule. This new molecule is called PGX, and it's able to bind more water than any other known fiber. So it binds more than 600 times its weight in water. So when you ingest it, it forms this gelatinous mass in your stomach. It's mainly composed of water. That tells your brain that you're satisfied, that you've got enough going on there. A 5-gram serving of PGX is equal to about 100 grams of psyllium, or about a bottle of Metamucil. Now, if you took a bottle of Metamucil, you're not going to feel like eating, trust me. The difference with the Metamucil is you're going to be very uncomfortable and you're probably going to have to call a plumber. With PGX, it's not uncomfortable. That mass is largely composed of water, and when PGX hits the small and large intestine, it basically evaporates into short-chain fatty acids because it's the most powerful prebiotic ever known. Prebiotics feed those health-promoting bacteria. So PGX is very important because it stimulates the action of insulin. We've been working with PGX now for almost 10 years. There are over 20 scientific investigations that show that PGX reduces the appetite and promotes weight loss. It increases the levels of compounds that promote satiety. Effective weight loss is not a matter of willpower or deprivation. It's about helping your brain feel satisfied. I mentioned that the way insulin works is that it binds to a receptor site on our cells, and it opens up channels that allows glucose to enter into that cell. We have specialized brain cells that control our appetite. They're sensitive to insulin, or they should be. When we develop insulin resistance, blood sugar levels are high, but inside that cell, because the insulin's not opening up those channels, there's a relative insufficiency of nutrients, of glucose in that cell. So what does that cell think? It thinks it's starving. So what's it going to do? It's going to move us to eat, and eat foods that are going to quickly raise our blood sugar level. PGX has an unparalleled ability to stabilize blood sugar levels and improve our ability to control our appetite and help us reduce our calorie intake. The secret to weight loss, it's not about these, metabolic enhancers or even exercising more for most people. The real key is helping people reduce the amount of calories that they consume. PGX is a tool that can help people do that nearly effortlessly. So PGX lowers the levels of compounds that tell your brain to eat while raising the levels of compounds that tell your brain that you're satisfied. So if you want more information on PGX, it's in your packet. But I think it's a very important strategy to lowering that systemic inflammation, particularly if you're carrying any excess weight around that midsection. Here are some other dietary recommendations. So we want to eat to improve insulin sensitivity. How do we do that? What else do we need to do? Well, we need to stay away from foods that are going to quickly raise our blood sugar level. They're inflammatory. Too much sugar in the diet is inflammatory. So stay away from refined sugar, refined carbohydrates. Stay away from soft drinks, candy. Stay away from too much fruit in the diet, anything that's going to cause your blood sugar levels to rise rapidly. Identify and eliminate food allergies. Food allergies are a problem for a lot of people. And when you have a food allergy, it really sets the stage towards absorbing compounds from your intestinal tract that shouldn't be absorbed. And it really leads to even greater inflammation than you would have if you didn't have food allergies. So the common food allergens are wheat, particularly gluten, milk, corn, soy, peanuts, eggs, and citrus. So sometimes staying away from those foods is a good way to judge whether or not you are allergic to them. This is especially easy if you have an allergic condition like eczema or asthma, or you have arthritis that seems to be associated with some inflammation. You can do a trial. Next, I recommend a rainbow assortment of fruits and vegetables. These pigments are very important in reducing inflammation. So one good goal every day is to get 5 servings of vegetables and 2 servings of fruit each day. A serving is defined as 1/2 cup cooked or 1 cup uncooked. So 5 servings of vegetables. French fries, potato chips, they don't count. Okay, green leafy vegetables are really good. Raw or cooked, I like to split it about 50-50. I tend to eat more raw food in the summer, more cooked food in the winter. These plant pigments are critical in protecting our cells from damage. They're very important in protecting those endothelial cells from damage. So 5 servings of vegetables, 2 servings of fruit per day. How many people think they get that? Okay? They've done dietary surveys, and only about 11% of Americans reach that goal of 5 per day. Again, if we don't count French fries and potato chips as vegetables. So we got to get that intake up. The research is really clear. If you look at any chronic disease, heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's disease, macular degeneration, cataracts, arthritis, any disease that's associated with aging, when they've looked at people that are able to eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables each day, these people have a much lower rate of developing those health conditions. So this is a target. That's why the government has spent some money trying to get people to eat 5 a day. I'm telling you to eat a little bit more than that. I'm telling you to eat 5 servings of vegetables, 2 servings of fruit. Now, if that seems like a lot to you, good. Focus on those big salads. It's easy to get 5 cups of vegetables in a salad, right? That's a big salad, but don't douse it with a lot of blue cheese dressing and high calorie dressing. Use flaxseed oil and make your own oil and vinaigrette. But try to keep the dressing low. But if we fill ourselves up on these high nutrient dense foods, low calorie but high nutrient, we're going to help our brain feel more satisfied. I think one of the reasons why we have a problem with obesity in America is that so many people are overfed but undernourished. And I think our brain cells really start responding to being fed when we feed them better nutrition. So 5 servings of fruit, vegetables a day, 2 servings of fruit. Try to eat organic. Most people need to reduce the intake of meat and other animal foods. We have to eat the right types of fat, keep salt intake low, potassium intake high. The reason why the type of fat is so important in virtually every health condition is that the type of fat that we consume in our diet determines the type of fats that we have in our cell membranes. This is a cross-section of our cell membrane. All of the cells in our body have these membranes, and these membranes are largely composed of fat. The type of fat that we consume determines the type of fat that we have in the cell membrane. When there's an inflammatory response, there's damage to the cells, and there's damage to the cell membrane. The type of fat that we have in our cell membranes will determine whether that inflammation starts spreading or if we can quell it because of anti-inflammatory fats. So, these are examples of anti-inflammatory fats. The monounsaturated fats that we get from olive oil and nuts and seeds are really important. We should be cooking with olive oil or macadamia nut oil. We should be trying to have about 1/4 cup of nuts and seeds each day. Now that doesn't mean chocolate-covered almonds or yogurt-covered cashews or whatever. I'm talking about preferably raw or lightly dry-roasted nuts and seeds. These foods have been shown to help insulin work its magic, and believe it or not, regular consumption of nuts and seeds is associated with lower body mass. Even though they're high calorie, if we keep their portion size small, they are an anti-fat food because they're helping insulin work better. And if you help insulin work better, you're going to promote more lean body weight. And of course, the omega-3 fatty acids that we get from fish oils are very important. There are about 60 different health conditions that have been shown to be benefited by higher dosages of these long-chain omega-3 fatty acids that we get from fish and fish oil supplements. Most people are aware that fish oils are associated with a lower risk of having a heart attack or a stroke. A dosage of 1,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA each day, you can reduce your risk of having a heart attack or stroke by over 50%. That's even better than exercise. I don't like telling people that because they think they don't have to exercise. So I want you to do it all. But my key point is that fish oils are very important in reducing our risk for having a heart attack or stroke. And as far as fighting cancer, of all the nutritional factors, higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids in our cell membranes appear to be the most important anti-cancer factors. These fats are also very important for the structure and function of our brain. Our brain is literally a vat of fat. So the type of fat that you consume determines the type of fat that you have in your brain. The type of fat you have in your brain determines how well that brain functions. And I didn't have far to come from the airport to here, but I'm telling you, just from that short drive, I noticed that there are a lot of people in Missouri that need more fish oils. So these fish oils have been shown to be helpful in virtually every psychiatric or psychological condition for good reason. Your brain needs these. So studies have shown that higher intakes of these omega-3 fatty acids can be helpful in depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, attention deficit disorder, agoraphobia, schizophrenia. These are fantastic natural medicines for these conditions, and yet they're underutilized. Your brain needs these. And as it relates to this topic, fish oils are very important in reducing inflammation. And this has been demonstrated in some severe inflammatory conditions like rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is one of the most severe inflammatory conditions that you'll ever see. Yet diet and omega-3 fatty acid supplementation has been shown to be very effective in rheumatoid arthritis. If diet and omega-3 fatty acids can be helpful in that severe of an inflammatory process, trust me, with what most of us are dealing with in terms of inflammation, we can get great results just through diet and using fish oils. Now, how much do you need to take? For general health, the recommendation is 1,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA each day. That dosage was come about by looking at studies and looking at the level of these long-chain omega-3 fatty acids inside of red blood cells. And they found that when people were able to achieve this level, that level carried with it all the benefits in reducing the risk for having a heart attack or stroke. Now, in the treatment of inflammatory conditions like rheumatoid arthritis or psoriasis or eczema or asthma, they found that a higher dosage was needed. So if you have severe inflammation, then you need to take 3,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA each day. EPA and DHA, those are those long-chain omega-3 fatty acids from fish. So when you're taking a fish oil, you need to look not at the amount of the fish oil, but the amount combined of EPA and DHA. So for general health, 1,000 milligrams. For more therapeutic aspects, 3,000 milligrams. I have up here, use the highest quality fish oil. I hope you all know how you can judge that. You look at the label. You look at the label really close, and what you're looking for my picture. I have some really good fish oils here. This is an example of a pharmaceutical grade fish oil. What does that mean? Anybody can call their product a pharmaceutical grade because there's no real standard. What we mean by pharmaceutical grade is it's manufactured in a certified drug manufacturing facility. That ensures steps are in place for purity and potency. That's the key measure. So we have different versions of RX omega-3 factors. So in this capsule version here, there's 400 milligrams of EPA and 200 milligrams of DHA. So there's 600 milligrams per capsule. So for general health, I would recommend 2 capsules per day. We also have a liquid formula. So again, the key is just make sure you get the right dosage. Yes? Children would need about the same. Now, I developed a formula specifically for people with severe inflammatory conditions. It's called a whole body rejuvenation formula. This formula is really designed as a multiple vitamin, mineral, multi-nutrient formula for people that have rheumatoid arthritis, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, other autoimmune diseases. Anyone who has a severe inflammatory condition, I would recommend this formula as a base foundation. It contains not only vitamins and minerals that are important, but it contains several anti-inflammatory compounds, including a compound from a milk protein concentrate. This milk protein concentrate is produced by immunizing cows, and these cows end up secreting anti-inflammatory compounds in the milk. Then through a proprietary process, this microlactin concentrates those principles. Clinical trials have shown it to be very helpful in several different inflammatory conditions, particularly those that affect joint health. There are no adverse effects that were noted. In one study that looked at its effects in osteoarthritis, it worked 3 times faster than glucosamine. So this is really a good testimony to its action in inflammatory conditions in that it works a bit faster than some of the old standbys. Over 32 clinical trials have been performed to date, including some trials in severe inflammatory conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and psoriasis. So again, for severe inflammation, look to that whole body rejuvenation formula. I'll have some other recommendations for severe inflammatory conditions as well. So for general inflammation, there's a lot that we can do with diet and with basic supplementation. But when people have severe inflammatory conditions, we have to call in greater support. And one of the most powerful anti-inflammatories from nature are enzymes, particularly proteolytic enzymes. These are enzymes that digest proteins. There are different sources of these proteolytic enzymes. We can get them from plants like pineapple and papaya. We can get them from hog pancreas. And we can get it from bacteria and also from yeast. I like to recommend a mixture of all of these enzymes because they overlap. Not one of these enzymes has the same broad spectrum anti-inflammatory effect that we would see by using a complex of these enzymes. These enzymes have been shown to reduce inflammation on a number of different levels. And one of the most powerful ways that these enzymes reduce inflammation is by reducing the level of what are called circulating immune complexes. Diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, ankylosing spondylitis, they're categorized as autoimmune diseases. These are diseases where the body starts attacking itself. When the body attacks itself, what's happening is that an antibody is being bound to an antigen to form an immune complex. And typically in these autoimmune diseases, we have high levels of circulating immune complexes. These enzymes have been shown to stimulate body processes in a way to help clear those circulating immune complexes. That's very important because what happens if you don't get those circulating immune complexes cleared is they get deposited in tissues. So, for example, in rheumatoid arthritis, if those immune complexes get deposited in the joints, it causes our white blood cells to go in there to try and destroy those immune complexes, and in the process, they destroy our joint tissue. So we want to get rid of those immune complexes. These proteolytic enzymes can do that. So I developed a proteolytic enzyme formula that contains pancreatin from hog pancreas, papain from papaya, peptozyme, which is from a bacteria, silkworm enzyme they call it, and bromelain. There's information, I believe, in your packet on the use of these proteolytic enzymes, but they have other applications as well. They're very helpful in clearing mucus from your respiratory tract. So patients with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or sinusitis or bronchitis can gain benefit from these proteolytic enzymes. In one of the studies with proteolytic enzymes, they took patients with rheumatoid arthritis that were being treated with the chemotherapy drug methotrexate as well as nonsteroidals. And what they found is that they experienced greater relief when they added the enzyme preparation to that conventional approach. So even if someone's doing the conventional approach, they can use these enzymes very safely. The last natural anti-inflammatory that I want to touch on is the special compound from turmeric known as curcumin. How many people have heard of curcumin? It's in the news a lot right now. It really is a fascinating compound. It's responsible for the yellow pigment in turmeric root, and turmeric root is the major ingredient in curries. I'll tell you some of the research that's been done with curcumin, but I love this quote. What curry is for Indian cuisine, curcumin could be for medicine. This was an article that was in Science News, talked about spicing up memory. What they found was that, Alzheimer's disease is nearing epidemic proportions here in America. And in Alzheimer's disease, what's happening is that there's a formation of a protein called beta amyloid. It's almost like a scar protein, and it leads to accumulation and the formation of what are called neurofibrillary tangles in the brain. So the brain stops working properly, and that's one of the characteristics of Alzheimer's disease. Well, when they started looking at dietary factors, they found that in India, when they compared Alzheimer's disease rates in a community that consumed a high amount of curry in their diet compared to a neighboring community that didn't eat curry, they found that the rate of Alzheimer's disease was 80% less in the group that ate a lot of curry. Well, obviously, they knew about curcumin, and they started looking at curcumin as a treatment for Alzheimer's disease. And what they found was in these test tube studies is that curcumin would prevent the formation of this beta amyloid, and in the animal studies, it would actually dissolve these plaques and lead to restoration of normal function. So it's very encouraging. Now, when we look at the effects of curcumin, it's been referred to as a molecular and preclinical cure-all. What does that mean? Well, there have been over 6,000 scientific studies on curcumin. Most of these studies have been in test tube studies or in animals. So these are called preclinical studies. And in these studies, curcumin looks to be a cure-all because it addresses the underlying aspects of inflammation. What this slide is showing you is curcumin at the center, and all of these factors around curcumin represent inflammatory mediators, like C-reactive protein I talked about. C-reactive protein is just one of more than 40 or so inflammatory mediators. Curcumin is the only substance that's been shown to be effective in blocking the formation or action against all of these inflammatory mediators. So that's why it's showing possible benefits in all these different applications, in cancer, in chronic disease, and neurodegenerative diseases, and in inflammation and in infection. Now, the problem with curcumin is that it's not very well absorbed. Dosages as high as 12 grams will only raise it just a blip, only to 51 nanograms per ml. That's not enough. The therapeutic efficacy of any drug or any natural product is based upon delivering an effective dose. So when they do their test tube studies or animal studies, they know what the concentration requirements are in order to see the desired effects. So the problem with giving curcumin in its regular form to humans is we can't get to that same level of concentration. So there's been a focus on ways in which we can enhance the absorption of curcumin. The pinnacle of this research is the development of a product called TheraCurmin. Now, TheraCurmin is a very special curcumin product that's made by first wet milling curcumin into a very small particle size. This means that the molecules are bombarded while in solution so that the particle size is 300 times smaller than the typical curcumin particle. They then microencapsulate that curcumin with a vegetable gum called gum gaddy so it doesn't reform that crystal. So in that process, we form a little microencapsulated curcumin. The bottom line is that this TheraCurmin is 300 times better absorbed than regular curcumin. So it's 300 times better absorbed. So even though there's only 30 milligrams of curcumin in a TheraCurmin capsule, that 30 milligrams is equal to about 8,000 milligrams of regular curcumin. This TheraCurmin is the latest advanced form of curcumin. There are other forms out there that claim to be better absorbed. I have these listed up here as brand A, brand B, and brand C, and these are all at higher dosages than what they typically recommend. The bottom line is that theracurmin is the only one that's been shown to produce what's called a linear response, linear dose response. What that means is the higher the dose, the higher the blood level. Now, for general anti-inflammatory effects, like if you had an elevated C-reactive protein, any one of these other brands as well as theracurmin are going to be able to produce an effect, because really we only have to be in about this range to see an effect on mild inflammation. But in the case of Alzheimer's disease or cancer or severe inflammation, the dosage that's required is much, much higher. And theracurmin is the only form of curcumin to date that's been shown to be able to produce these levels. So researchers around the globe, they're jumping on this theracurmin bandwagon. And very soon, before the end of this year, it'll be the most thoroughly researched form of curcumin. Right now, these are published studies that have been done. It's been shown to improve alcohol metabolism, liver function, been shown to improve the water retention and elasticity of the skin. It's been shown to reduce inflammation after exercise and reduce muscle fatigue. Been shown to help restore proper elasticity of large blood vessels. It's been shown to improve heart function. Now, currently there are over a dozen studies being done with this form of curcumin, including a study being done at MD Anderson in advanced cancers, and a study being done at University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, in advanced Alzheimer's disease. Now, there was another study that was done with curcumin in humans in Alzheimer's disease, but it wasn't effective. Why wasn't it effective? Because they weren't able to achieve the same concentration that was shown to be of benefit in the test tube in the animal studies. So this form of curcumin really represents an advanced form of curcumin. If you've used other curcumin products with success, like I said, in mild inflammation, I think we can get there with other forms. We can get there possibly through eating more curry in the diet. But for some of these more advanced conditions, there's no question that theracurmin is a real game changer. So let's recap what I've talked about. I've stressed the importance of silent inflammation as being a key underlying factor in many disease processes, particularly heart disease, cancer, and Alzheimer's disease. I've also stressed the importance of diet and how we can reduce inflammation through changing our diet, reducing the intake of inflammatory foods, such as fried foods and foods that are too high in, or diets that are too high in meat and dairy. We need to focus on those plant pigments and the right types of oils. I've also talked about the use of proteolytic enzymes. I talked about the use of that whole body rejuvenation formula. And then I ended up by talking about the use of theracurmin in more advanced inflammatory conditions. What I'd like to do now is just open the floor up to any questions that you may have. I'd like you first to focus on what I've talked about, and then we'll open it up for general questions after that. Yes?
Hi, thank you.
Okay, two questions were asked. One, what about flaxseed oil and other vegetable sources of omega-3 fatty acids? The benefits that we are talking about in terms of reducing inflammation, reducing the risk of having a heart attack, and reducing the risk for the major forms of cancer have been well established with those longer chain omega-3 fatty acids. Flaxseed oil and the vegetarian sources, they have their benefit, they have their place. I promote them, but we can't equate the benefits to those long chain omega-3 fatty acids to the shorter chain omega-3 fatty acids from flaxseed oil. Only about 0.3% of what we consume in that short chain alpha-linolenic acid is actually converted to DHA, the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids. So we can't equate the two. That said, I do think it's very important to get flaxseed oil and other vegetable sources of omega-3 fatty acids in the diet. The other question had to do with the types of different forms of fish oils that are out there. When companies are concentrating for these long-chain omega-3 fatty acids and purifying these crude fish oils, in the process, they strip the fatty acids away from the glycerol molecule. In nature, these fats exist as triglycerides, 3 fatty acids bound to a glycerol molecule. So when they're making these fish oils, that bond is broken and you liberate those fats as free fatty acids. Some companies don't recombine the fatty acids to the glycerol, and they sell that oil as an ethyl ester form. The RX omega-3 factor is an ethyl ester form. The companies that sell the triglyceride form are really good at spouting off propaganda. But when we look at the clinical data, there's no difference between an ethyl ester form and a triglyceride form. When we look at absorption studies, all but one study showed that the two were equally well absorbed. Of course, the companies that sell the triglyceride like to tout that one study, short 2-week study. They also tout a longer-term study, which was a 6-month study that looked at the blood levels of EPA and DHA after 6 months of supplementation of the ethyl ester form or the triglyceride form. After 6 months, the omega-3 index for the triglyceride form was 13.25%. The ethyl ester form was 12.3%. Now, that was just a 1% difference, but they claimed that their form was far superior. Clinically, no difference. That 1% was irrelevant. So I like the ethyl ester form just fine. It's really cost effective. It's about 2.5 times less expensive than the reesterified triglyceride. So I think your value is better with the ethyl ester, and most of the clinical research on fish oils has been done with the ethyl ester form. So over 600 double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. The overwhelming majority of these studies have been done with the ethyl ester form. So that's why I recommend that. Yeah. Yeah, with fish oils, the question is liquid or gel. It really doesn't matter. One question I'll typically get is, what about krill oil? Krill oil is getting promoted a lot. With krill oil, I think it's a good oil, but to get the level of EPA and DHA that you need is virtually impossible from an economic perspective. You'll be spending a lot of money. And we know that the benefits are largely due to EPA and DHA. So with the krill oil, there may only be 100 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids in that krill oil capsule. So you would have to take 10 capsules a day, and it's a very expensive product. Now, here's what the krill oil people will tell you. They'll tell you, well, it's in a phospholipid form, and it's better absorbed. What does the science tell us? Well, they actually did a study where they compared the blood levels of krill oil to an ethyl ester to a triglyceride, and they found there was no difference among the three. So I like the less expensive form.
Sir, just if I may, just the second question, please.
Okay, the question is, how does turmeric compare to curcumin? Curcumin is a yellow pigment in turmeric. Maybe 3.5 to 5% of that turmeric is curcumin. When we're looking at these studies with crude turmeric preparations, typically they're using dosages of 500 milligrams of curcumin 3 times a day. So you would have to get 500 milligrams, you would have to take 100 grams. So Yeah. It's better to take an extract. You're taking the gold out of the crude gold ore. Yes, all the way in the back. No, peanut butter is not a nut. It's a legume. Peanut butter is fine for a lot of people. My concern with peanut butter is it is a common allergen, and some peanuts are rich in aflatoxins. So I don't know. I'm not a big peanut butter fan. I like nut butters. I like almond butter. I don't know if they have. Bob, do you have a nut grinder here? Do you sell, can people grind their own nut butters here? Yeah, grind the almond butter. Just grind the almond butter. That's what we use at our house. I think it's a healthier nut butter. Can you take too much curcumin? In the safety studies that have been done with the theracurmin, they've given dosages as high as 20 grams per kilogram body weight and not seen any negative effect. So, and with regular curcumin, it's probably not a big issue because it's so poorly absorbed. 12 grams of regular curcumin only produced just a minor blip in blood levels, so you really can't take too much regular curcumin. In the advanced form, we haven't seen any toxicity. Yes? Okay. With theracurmin, they take regular curcumin, they put it in solution, and through a process called wet mill grinding, they grind the particle size 300 times smaller than normal, and then they solubilize that, or they coat that curcumin particle with a vegetable gum called gum gaddy. That produces what's called a colloidal suspension, making that curcumin now water soluble. So theracurmin has extreme water solubility, while regular curcumin does not. And the absorption of curcumin is related to its solubility. So because of the high solubility that's produced with theracurmin, we have 300 times greater absorption compared to regular curcumin. Yes? The question is there an inflammatory component to Lyme's disease? Absolutely. The way that I approach chronic Lyme's disease is very much similar to how I approach rheumatoid arthritis. I approach it as being kind of like an autoimmune disease. The same sort of dietary and supplement strategies that I give for rheumatoid arthritis would be applicable for chronic Lyme's disease. Yes? That's a general recommendation. If you don't know where your fish is coming from, our fish supply is polluted, and studies show that people who consume more than 2 servings per week of fish run the risk of mercury toxicity as well as increased levels of other heavy metals and toxicants. So a good idea, unless you know where the fish is coming from. Wild Alaskan salmon is very good. You want to stay away from farm salmon. You want to stay away from farm fish in general. Tilapia is the exception. Tilapia tends to be very clean. So it really depends on what fish you're eating, but as a general rule, most experts recommend consume fish no more than twice per week. Okay, just a few more questions. Yes? No. Sugar's sugar as far as, from a nutritional viewpoint, and we need to cut down the sugar content of our diet. We get way too much. Yes, all the way in the back. One of my recommendations is to stay away from sources of omega-6 fatty acids, not just from meat and dairy, but the omega-6 oils, corn, safflower, sunflower, soy. They're very inflammatory because that omega-6 fatty acid can be converted to that really harmful fat, arachidonic acid within our body. So I think nuts and seeds in general, you want to keep that portion size to about a quarter of a cup per day. On an occasion, it's not that bad. But I prefer the nuts and seeds that are higher in the monounsaturated fats, like all the other nuts and seeds. Yes. Coconut oil. Coconut oil is fine. I don't recommend cooking with it. I think a lot of people have misinterpreted the data. What the data showed is if people substituted using butter with using coconut, that it was actually shown to help people lose weight. But what's happening is that people think, oh, coconut oil will help me lose weight, and they just simply add another couple hundred calories to their diet, and they end up gaining weight. So coconut oil, good oil, but I don't cook with it, and I rarely use it. I would use it as a spread if I was using it. Yes? Canola oil is a good oil. There's a lot of propaganda out there, misinformation on canola oil. I just ran across a site the other day. But canola oil is fine. You just want to make sure it's organic, non-GMO canola oil. Yes? I don't recommend grapeseed oil. It's primarily an omega-6 oil. So, and it doesn't have a good smoke point. I think you're better off using olive oil. They have an oil here that I really like to cook with. It's macadamia nut oil. The problem with olive oil is that sometimes you want to eat foods that don't taste like olive oil. The macadamia nut oil gives food a really nice flavor. It's a good change of pace. You can use that. You can use canola oil. A couple more questions. Yes? My whole body rejuvenation formula has some anti-inflammatory compounds from milk-based protein. If you're sensitive to milk, then it would be something to avoid. When most people are sensitive to milk, they're sensitive to the casein part, the milk protein. We have hydrolyzed that protein to make it non-allergenic in this formula. So most people, even if they're sensitive to dairy, tolerate this very, very well. I know we could stay and talk and answer questions and forever, but I like to end all my presentations while I still have a captive audience, so lock the doors. I like to end my presentations by highlighting 5 keys that I think are really important to live a life worth living. And everything I've said tonight's really important, but I like this end part because I get a chance to get up on my soapbox and really share with you some of the things that I've learned that can really help people live not only a healthier life, but a happier life and create more value in their life and the lives that they touch. Number 1, I think it's important to make a spiritual connection. I know many people try to make it through life without faith, without religion, and without God, but I think life's very difficult without those things. And I encourage people to find their path, live it, love it, learn from it, and enjoy it, but make that spiritual connection. Number 2, I encourage people to take personal responsibility for where they are right now in their life, to take personal responsibility for the choices and decisions that they make in their lives, and to take charge of their health. It's yours. So take personal responsibility for the things that you can control and should be responsible for in your life. Number 3, life is hard, but life is better if you look for the good in all things and the good in all people. So become an optimist. Become a good finder. Look for the good in the people that you meet, and look for the good in those closest to you especially. Number 4, you have to have passion in your life. So find your passion. Find the things in life that make life worth living and engage in those activities on a regular basis. If you're not plugged in to things that you enjoy in life, you're not going to enjoy life. So find pleasure and passion in your life. And lastly, you have to create a vehicle in your life that makes a difference in the lives of others. That's the real key. You know, I was really touched by Bob's introduction, not because he was saying nice things about me. That's good too, but you know, he used a word at least 3 or 4 times. He used the word of being here to serve, service. That's what we're here for. We're all here to serve each other. And you have to create vehicles in your life to serve our fellow human being. I love these opportunities to come into health food stores. This is one of the best health food stores in the country. You have no idea. It really is. And what makes it great is not just the phenomenal assortment of products and the education, but really this store has a heartfelt goal of trying to make a difference in your lives. And it's a vehicle for these folks to help you. So take advantage of it. They're here to serve you. Bob said it eloquently, more eloquently than me, but we're here to serve each other, and this is a great health food store to get information and to get the right product. If you get the right product for the right indication, you're going to get the right results. That's especially true with these dietary supplements. So use their expertise, use my resources. I want to tell you that I have a website. It's drmurray.com. DoctorMurray.com. drmurray.com. All the information on the site is free. If you have questions, please go there. If you can't come in tomorrow, please sign up for my free email newsletter. Become part of this community. Share it with your friends and family. We have to help people. We have to help people because we have answers. We have answers. So I'm going to end by asking you to do something for me. But really you're doing it for yourself. I'm primarily a medical researcher. I'm doing the same thing now that I did when I was in 4th grade. I had a wonderful teacher when I was in 4th grade, Mrs. Strand, and she would give you a star if you read a book and wrote a book report. Well, I had the most stars of any student she ever had because I loved Mrs. Strand and I wanted her approval. And I'm still wanting people's approval today. I guess that's why I write so many books and articles. So I sometimes come across some really important stuff, and I try to share it with people because I think, gosh, if everybody knew this, it would change their lives. So a few years ago, I was reading a Sports Illustrated article about Stan Musial. Now, I know here in Missouri, everybody probably remembers Stan Musial, one of the greatest baseball players that ever lived, but also one of the greatest human beings that ever lived. And in this article, it talked about his special goal in life was to make everyone feel appreciated. And I started thinking about that, and I realized that every person who I knew that was long-lived, that's a polite way of saying old, who I respected and admired and wanted to be like, everyone that I thought of shared a common feature. They lived with this state of grace, and they were free in their acknowledgments and showing appreciation and grace. So I started doing some research, and lo and behold, the single most important human trait in determining our ability to live a long and healthy life is our ability to show gratitude and show appreciation. And some of this research is absolutely profound. They took people who had severe, intractable depression, people who had been unresponsive to any medical or psychological treatment. They divided them into 6 groups. One of the groups, they had these patients write a letter of appreciation to someone who touched them in their lives, and then hand deliver that letter to that person. They found that that simple act had the greatest impact on mood scores in this study compared to any other treatment. 6 months after the study was done, they went back and reassessed, and these subjects that performed that exercise, their mood scores were still sky high. I read that and I thought, well, what happened? They couldn't just do something once and it changed their lives. Well, it's possible, but only if they had an epiphany, only if they had an awakening, and only if they recognized that in doing this activity, it touched them in a way that made them want to get that feeling over and over and over again. If you'd been suffering for so long and all of a sudden you felt good simply by showing somebody how much you appreciated them, don't you think you might start showing more appreciation in your life? What the research shows is when we do that, our lives change. It changes our lives. Our lives get better. You might have a great life now, it'll only get better. If you don't have a great life now, it will get better if you start showing more appreciation. So I'm going to ask you all to do something. I want you all in the next, I'll give you 48 hours. Don't forget, I'm giving you an extra 24 hours, but I really want you to think about it. I want you to reach out to someone who's made an impact in your life that you greatly appreciate, and let them know from the bottom of your heart how much they mean to you. You do that and you do it well, you watch the magic unfold not only in their life, but also in yours. So I want to have this opportunity to say, Bob, I don't know how many years I've been doing this now, but at least 10, I think, 10 years. I look forward to doing this for another 20 or more. I love it here, and I love you all. God bless you. Thank you.